Hi, it's Scott from Pacific Automation here. In this video, I'm going to take you through how to program a Lumel N21 digital panel meter. I've got one of them set up on the bench here. I've got it connected up to a 24 volt DC power supply and a 4 to 20 milliamp input. And I've also got it connected to my computer already via the native USB mini port. One of the great things about the N21 is that it does just have a native USB interface, which makes it really easy to program. You don't have to have a special cable. It's in factory default mode at the moment, so we're going to jump into Econ. And if you haven't already, make sure you have your USB drivers and Econ installed. We covered those in some prior videos in this series, so if you haven't watched them, we're going to put some links above to the playlist, and make sure you go back and get your USB drivers and your software installed before we continue on. We're in Econ now, and in top left is where we select our device, and we can already see, because I've got my USB drivers installed, the N21's already coming up on my communication ports. So let's select our device. So we're going to filter for the N21. We're going to tick the use the factory default settings for this module, and we're going to connect. Okay, so we can see now that the status is port connected, and we have the configuration window up here now for our device. For this demo, we're going to simulate using a 4 to 20 milliamp input from a 0 to 200 bar pressure sensor. So the N21 can take inputs, can take voltage, millivolts, milliamps, PT100 and thermocouples for temperature. As I said, we're going to use 4 to 20 milliamps for this demo, so I'm going to select the measuring input as milliamp meter. The defining units, one of the great things about having this OLED display is that you can set your engineering units. So as I said, we're going to pretend this is a 0 to 200 bar sensor for this particular application. So I'm going to edit, and I'm going to select from the predefined units that it's bar. As you can see, you can also set, say, degrees Celsius, meters cubed, liters, whatever you might need in here. And I'm going to save that so that when we save this configuration, it comes up in bar as our engineering units. The next setting we have is whether to set up the decimal point. You can either have 1, 2, or 3 decimal places. I'm going to set ours to 2. This is a 5-digit display, and because we're doing 200 bar, I'm going to allow for 2 decimal places so that we use all 200, all 5 digits of the display for this demo. The next section is averaging time. So if you have a process that's changing quickly, say you were filling a tank and you were taking a level and it was sloshing about and you wanted to take an average over 5 or 10 seconds, you can set that here. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to keep it short at 0.5 milliseconds. Automatic compensation is down to temperature. It can do automatic temperature compensation within the unit. So you either set it as yes or no. Typically, you leave it as yes. If you want to set it to no, you can do some manual compensation here. Because we're not doing a temperature input, this isn't relevant to us. The next setting is the really important one. This is where we set the scaling of the display. If you're doing a temperature input, you typically don't need to worry about your scaling because you're going to be taking the PT100 and or the thermocouple and just be displaying it. But for us, where we're doing 4 to 20 milliamps equals 0 to 200 bar, we have to set those parameters up for the scaling. So here we select characteristics included to say we are doing the characteristics. And here's where we set that up. So X1, Y1 and X2, Y2. These are our 2 points on the line that we're working on. So in this case, we're going to say 4 milliamps equals 0 bar and 20 milliamps equals 200 bar. So that's setting up the scaling between the display and our sensor. The next section is the bar graph. Now, one of the challenges with a digital display over an old analog display is that you don't normally get an idea of where you are in the range if you just have a pure digital display. The great thing about the N21 is it does have a bar graph in it, so you can set the limits of your application to know where you are in the range, whether you're halfway up, whether you're close to the top. It's a really great quick visual indicator to let you know where you are. So in this case, we've got our 0 to 200 bar sensor, but maybe for our application, we only want to go to 100 bar. So let's set the bar graph threshold at 180. So if anyone was walking around and it was above 180, we know we were out of range, but still within the range of our sensor. And that's it for the input configuration. The N21 also has a relay output, and here's where we can set the working mode of the relay. Now, for this example, in the box when you get it, you'll get a service manual, and I've got a copy of it here, which shows you how the alarms work. whether it's a normally on, normally off, whether it's a window alarm, or whether the alarms are just either on or off. So I'm going to do a N on type alarm, which is a high alarm. So it will trigger on when we get to our alarm high value and trigger back off when we get to our low value. So in here, I'm going to say I want to know when our process gets above 100 bar, and I want it to trip back off when it goes down below 80. And sorry, I have to set that to our N on type relay. Okay, make sure we select English as the language here in Australia. And also, this is a really important one, which is writing the parameters to memory. If you don't tick that box, it won't save the program to the memory of the display. And when you power cycle, you'll lose it. That's okay when you're just doing configurations and doing a bit of testing, but it's really important that you tick that box before you do your final configuration. So that's it, that's our unit configured. So I'm going to hit the save button now, and you'll see it communicating, and our device is rebooting with that new configuration. I'm just going to turn on my signal generator. Okay, so now I'm just driving a signal into that up and down from 4 to 20 milliamps. And as you can see, it's going up, and as it hits 180, it's ticking. We can see that the engineering unit of bar is in there, and as we go back down, it's staying within that standard range. The N21 can also be configured to be in a vertical orientation, so say that's particularly useful for tank level. I'm going to show you that in the next video, how to set that up. But yeah, that's the basics of how to set up an N21. One of the things that I really encourage people to do is after you've configured it, always make sure as a good habit just to power cycle it. The reason I do that is to make sure that the program that I've put in there has stayed in there and I have ticked that writing parameters to memory. There's nothing worse than when you've been out on site, you've configured a bunch of displays, and then the next time they isolate the power and it turns back on, all your displays don't turn on. So it's a really good habit to be in, just to make sure you power cycle to make sure the program is staying in there. And just fix a little mistake I noticed. We set our low and high values at 60 and 80, but we didn't actually set the on and off delays, and the default in there at the moment is 100 seconds. So if you want these to be instant, make sure you just set them to 0 and 0 and save. And what we'll pick up now when that goes on is we'll hear the relay clicking as it goes up and down. So yeah, make sure you set your high and low, and that's based off the bar graph threshold numbers. And you can hear now that the relay is tripping when it goes up over 80 bar. There it goes. And as it comes back down, we'll see it drop below 60 bar. Depending on your application, you may want to set an on and off delay to make sure you're not getting false trips, but that is where you do that setting. In the next series of this video, I'm going to show you how you upload the firmware to make it a vertical display. So keep tuned for that in the playlist. If you have any questions on the N21 display, please make sure you get in contact with us at pacificautomation.com.au.